Hi, everybody. It's Andrew Hutchings with you here tonight. Not a doctor, not giving medical advice, just consolidating information and putting it in one place along with an opinion if it ever seems like medical advice. And this is a random video. I mean, most of mine are, but this is like extra random, if that's even a thing. This video is just like not really a defined topic, but about how alcohol lowers your blood pressure and that leads to an increase in heart rate. Now, there are some pharmacological effects of alcohol that could increase heart rate a little bit, but then it's like most of alcohol's pharmacology would decrease heart rate, even though they say, oh, alcohol's a stimulant in low doses. And yes, it has stimulatory effects. It's not a stimulant by any means, though, quite the opposite. So what happens when, alcohol is a vasodilator, meaning that your blood vessels and everything, they open up bigger. So maybe you remember that term from my pre-workout videos where I talk about pre-workout supplements like nitric oxide and L-arginine and L-citrulline, stuff like that. So they dilate blood vessels. Dilate means like it relaxes them, which causes them to open up bigger, more blood flow. Now, more blood, like when they open up bigger, that's less squeezing. It means lower pressure. Less squeezing, because it opens up bigger, lower blood pressure. Now, your body, it wants to be in what's called homeostasis. Like, if it's here and you move it here, it wants to go back to here. You move it here, it wants to go back to there. The body wants to be how it wants to be. So when you dilate the blood vessels and the blood pressure goes down, well, let's say it would like to just constrict them again, but it can't because they're being forced to be open bigger. So it has to do something else. It jacks up the heart rate to pump more blood through them. If it can't decrease the amount of space that blood has, it has to just increase the amount of blood in that space. So it increases the heart rate. This is a similar effect as marijuana. So marijuana, while it may be relaxing for some people, it may not be relaxing for others, but it also dilates blood vessels, causing blood pressure to drop, and the body then increases heart rate, sometimes quite a lot, to make up for that drop in blood pressure. So that's actually why, although they increase your heart rate quite a lot, they're not typically dangerous to your cardiovascular health. Because unless your heart rate was so high that you had a heart attack, typically things that are dangerous for your cardiovascular system are when your blood pressure is high. Because high blood pressure damages the walls of the blood vessels and makes them more stiff, less able to stretch when they get surges of blood. I mean, someday they might just burst. Whereas an increased heart rate is going to overwork the heart muscles, but it's typically not a very problem. I mean, you still don't want chronically elevated heart rate. It's not good. The heart's a muscle, it gets tired. I mean, yeah, we don't normally think your heart can get tired, but it can. It's probably not going to just give out because you got a little bit too high one day, but doesn't mean that it all adds up, doesn't all add up, and that maybe gives out a year sooner in your 85th birthday instead of your 86th birthday. We just don't know because it's not really possible to do studies on this. Perhaps, I mean, it's kind of possible, it's just not really that feasible, and it's hard to really know what you'd have to do studies on people that die of heart attacks when they're old, and then you'd have to figure out which of them used things that increased heart rate and which didn't, and then you'd have to figure out if that's actually what affected their heart rate. I mean, what affected their heart giving out sooner. It's not very feasible for studies to do that. But yeah, alcohol and marijuana, they both dilate your blood vessels, which lowers your blood pressure in your body to get back into balance. It increases your heart rate to pump more blood, increase the blood pressure. So actually, that's why some people, they smoke marijuana after drinking alcohol, and they get, I think they call it the spins. Basically, they get really sick and they don't feel good because they both dilate the blood vessels. So you mix them together and you get a lot of dilation, really low blood pressure, really high heart rate. Not good. And while it's typically considered that, marijuana doesn't kill anybody, and we don't think of alcohol as giving people heart attacks, doesn't mean it's impossible for you to mix the two. I mean, it's not impossible to do it alone either, but you could have heart problems if you're just a very unlucky individual. While there may not be well-documented cases of heart attacks from marijuana, or marijuana mixed with alcohol, or alcohol, it doesn't mean that people can't have heart attacks from it. Now, I'm not saying it's likely, I'm not saying it's common, but I am saying that you can't ignore it. Because you could get the heart can only beat so fast before it just can't do it. And it just would just like go crazy trying to beat and, have a heart attack. Think about if you're trying to juggle some balls and you keep going faster and faster. At a certain point, you're just gonna drop all the balls. You can only go so fast. And instead of the balls hitting the ground, it's more like you die. So it's not. I just felt like talking about this because it's a commonly overlooked thing. And most people don't think of alcohol as increasing heart rate or marijuana as increasing heart rate, and they don't realize why when you mix them together, it can really jack up your heart rate a lot and not be the best thing. And that's also why an elevated heart rate from something like marijuana or alcohol cannot be combated as easily with a typical sedative like a benzodiazepine, because they also dilate blood vessels. So even though they are depressants and their pharmacological action leads to a slight decrease in the heart rate, they typically won't help too much in situations where the heart rate elevation is due to vasodilation, because the body needs the blood pressure to be in acceptable ranges. So it takes a much stronger sedative to actually overpower that. And your blood vessels can only dilate so much, so at a certain point, it can lower things. It's complicated. Just your body has to decide whether it's more important to lower the heart rate or more important to keep the blood pressure in acceptable, healthy ranges. Anything else I should talk about? Oh, that's why you'll see a weird inverse effect possibly in people where you have an elevated heart rate, but administering a stimulant that has vasoconstrictive properties, because typically vasoconstrictors are stimulants. That's what constricts blood vessels, the adrenaline binding to them, noradrenaline. So yes, sometimes it can be good to administer a stimulant to constrict those blood vessels, even though stimulants raise heart rate and blood pressure, because you need to raise the blood pressure so that the body can lower the heart rate. And that's something people just don't Now, obviously, if you had a vasoconstrictor with minimal stimulatory properties, that would be optimal. People just don't think about these things very much. It's I know doctors certainly don't have the best thought processes usually. I'm not saying no doctors can use good thinking. There are some out there who have good functioning brains. And certainly the general public does not typically think about this kind of stuff. Well, you don't need to think about this kind of stuff. You shouldn't be messing around with drugs. But I hope that my videos can help you, because I know that marijuana and alcohol are very popular, especially here in California where I live. And I also hope that you understand the workings of the human body, how you change one thing and it's going to change at least one other thing, if not more. And just because not everything's straightforward, like high heart rate, you would think, oh, give the person. I'm not saying to give anybody anything. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you to give some random person, but in like a medical setting, oh, high heart rate, let's give them a depressant to lower it. Well, it doesn't always work because sometimes the body, it's not the drugs or something that's elevating the heart rate. It's actually the body's compensating for them. I mean, that's what I just talked about. Like, the heart rate is high, not because of a pharmacological action, but because the indirect effect, the body has to raise the heart rate to keep the blood pressure up. So the heart rate can only really go down when the blood pressure goes up from more vasoconstriction. So yeah, normally you see high heart rate and think, oh, you need to do sedatives, depressants to get the heart rate down. Well, no, if it's from vasodilation, you need to constrict the blood vessels. Then the heart rate can come down. Then also administer sedatives or something, because that could be beneficial, help it get down more. Yeah, you just have to use your brain and realize the way things work. I've been lazy to make another video about this myostatin inhibitor because I think people in bodybuilding seem to be into these. Apparently, none of them really work too well, but that's why I'm going to talk about this new one that NASA used that worked really well, and I love the thought process behind its design. So instead of inhibiting the release of myostatin, like typically you would target, so like you want less of something, typically you would target it before it's produced, like to stop it from being made. But what they did is they made it so that they stopped it from, I mean, that's another way, but so I'll talk more about it in my other video. The way they designed this drug, and said drug hesitantly because it's not a, I mean, it's a drug, but it's a actual receptor they used, like it's a protein. Just a very unique, good, logical way to actually inhibit myostatin. You introduce fake receptors that it binds to instead of binding to the real ones and doing what it's supposed to do. But that is the topic of my next video, which I just gotta make for you guys. I've just been lazy to actually memorize all the numbers in the paper so I can quote them. But please like and subscribe. I hope you like this video. I hope it allowed you to gain some understanding of how the human body works and to apply good reasoning and logic to how the systems seek balance. And you can hire me for training advice, for diet advice, supplement advice, for medical consolidation of information along with an opinion. You can hire me for coaching, and soon my book on tendonitis. So please like and subscribe, especially if you like the video. Why not? Help me out a little bit. And check out my other videos because you'll like them, you'll learn stuff.